A Roadside Stand by Robert Frost. Yes, the same Robert Frost who wrote, "And I have miles to go before I sleep." Do go back to lecture number 7 and see what American poetry is all about. Robert Frost, a very, very popular poet because we think he writes simple poetry. I'm going to spend a minute or two talking about his life. After all, life does impact one's writings. Robert Frost had a very tragic kind of life. He lost his father when he was very, very young. And then 2 of his children died in childhood. A sister and a daughter had to be sent to mental institutes. A son of his committed suicide. His wife developed cancer, suffered for many years, and then died of a heart ailment. He himself outlived his wife by almost 30 years. That was Robert Frost's life. And yet we think he wrote very, very happy poems. Not really. I think when I think of Robert Frost as a poet, I'm amazed at the fact that his poems are not really as simple as they seem. You may have come across poems which seem difficult, but as you read them the second time, they become simpler. With Frost, exactly the opposite. His poems seem simple, but when you read them again, you realize that they are not really so simple. And that's what we are going to see in our poem today. A Roadside Stand. A poem not very well known, but I chose the poem because here Frost talks about social issues. I think most of us have driven along the highway from one town to another, one mega city to another. And what have we seen? We've seen those little stands. We call them dabbas or whatever you call them, right? And people are selling things. Oh, I love buying vegetables or fruits on the highway. The little old house was out with a new shed. In front at the edge of the road where the traffic sped, a roadside stand that too pathetically bled. It would not be fair to say for a dole of bread. There's a little shed there, outside the house probably, and they are selling something. Frost is making it very, very clear that they are not begging. It's not for a dole of bread. But what are they doing? They're selling something. But for some of the money, the cash whose flow supports the flower of cities from sinking and withering faint. And the next line, the polished traffic passed with a mind ahead. Or if ever, aside a moment, then out of sorts. People are speeding by on wonderful cars. They are not interested in all this. But even when they look at it, sadly, all that they feel is that the natural beauty of this place is being marred, is being sullied by the presence of these sheds. How unfair, because after all, these people are trying to earn their livelihood. There is beauty in nature, but then after all, these human beings have to earn their money too. Cars are just zooming past. The city dweller does not care. Let's look at the second verse where he says, "So much as the trusting sorrow of what is unsaid, here, far from the city, we make our roadside stand and ask for some city money to feed in hand." The impact of modernization, is it having an effect here? Yes, because these people need to earn their money. They need money and therefore they are selling some goods in these roadside stands. Let's come to the next stanza where he says, "It is in the news that all these pitiful kin are to be bought out and mercifully gathered in to live in villages next to the theatre and the store." Development. What exactly is development? Oh, there are ever so many theories. But one of the things that many cities try to do is to shift people into newer localities. So what are they doing? They are taking these people out of the countryside and taking them, shall I say, herding them into villages. People who are used to living in the open countryside will now be forced to live in smaller villages, crowded maybe, next to the theatre and the store, where they won't have to think for themselves anymore because the municipality is going to think for you, while greedy good doers, beneficent beasts of prey swarm over their lives, enforcing benefits. Frost was a lover of the rural countryside. You can see his pain and anger here when he talks about what we are trying to do in the name of modernization and development. You would have noticed that the poet's sympathies are totally with these people from the countryside who are trying to sell something. Let's go on to the next verse where he says, "Sometimes I feel I can hardly bear the thought of so much childish longing in vain, the sadness that lurks near the open window there." Can you imagine? These people have to sell something so that, as we say, their hearth is not left cold, so that their cooking fires can burn. But people don't come. People don't stop. They just whiz past in their cars. Of all the 1,000 selfish cars that pass, and what do they want to ask? They want to ask, is there a petrol pump close by? And then they want to know where this road leads. And another to ask, could they sell it a gallon of gas? They couldn't. This crassly, they had none, didn't it see? By this time, these sellers, these countryside dwellers are so irritated. And they say, can't you see that there's no gas available here? No. In country money, the country scale of gain, the requisite lift of spirit has never been found. No money, no livelihood, nothing to keep them going. So these people's spirits can never be lifted. Or so the voice of the country seems to complain. The poet can feel it. These city dwellers, these selfish, so-called development interested fellows, interested only in the commercialization, can't see this at all. I wonder how I should like you to come to me and offer to put me gently out of pain. Is relocation the answer? The question is asked, but no answer is given. It's a long poem, yes, with uneven rhyme scheme, uneven stanza lengths also, as I mentioned. But there are some figures of speech, the ones which we are now very familiar with. You've got repetition, you've got enjambment, you've got anaphora, and then you have the caesura, which probably some of you might recall, when in a verse, in a line, there is a punctuation mark, a full stop somewhere in the middle. Come on, that's your quiz. Look for it and see where we have the caesura. To me, what is important here is the total contrast throughout the poem, new and old, modern and old-fashioned, our ideas of progress or no progress. I read the poem, and there was within me a kind of sadness. I went back to that well-known poem by Thomas Gray, Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard, where actually he wrote it long ago at the end of the 18th century, where he was mourning the coming of industrialization, the end of rural beauty and simplicity of life. Did you find the same thing here in this poem? Can we look at both the poems in comparison? Try and do that, and I'm sure it'll be great fun.